going on?
Hold your eyes. Oh, killer.
There we go. That's all right. No worries, as long as they can see.
They can see it.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Oh, that was awful. It's Tuesday. It's not even a Monday. It's Tuesday. Let's try that again. Early? Oh my goodness. I'm not even gonna,
7 o'clock?
exactly. I'm not even gonna tell you what time I got up today. I don't want to hear it. Wah. Let's try that again. Good morning, everybody. That was better. Thank you. Brian had the best one though. Good morning, everybody. And by the way, this is not early. A lot of times we have this class at 7 a.m. So don't make me turn this classroom around. Be nice and happy and fun, because we actually get to sleep in more than usual. Welcome to 3D Foundations. Is everybody here for 3D Foundations? Okay, awesome. Just want to make sure I'm in the right place, because that's what I'm teaching, and I'm already set up, so I'm not moving. All right, so I know you have a ton of questions. You're really excited. You've been waiting so long to get to the class where we're actually starting to learn this stuff that you want to learn how to do for a living. So this is a big deal. And I am just as excited to teach you this material as you are to learn it. And that's the good part. Honestly, the best part of my day is coming to class to see you guys. This is by far my favorite. It always cheers me up. No, it's true. And honestly, when you're sick, you think about things like that.
You do.
And last month I had pneumonia, which was miserable. And I spent some time on my back, which is, I hate being on my back. But you think about things like this sometimes when you're a prisoner. And that's kind of how I looked at it, was prisoner. But truth of the matter is, I really missed being in the classroom, and I missed working with Brian. So very happy to be back and talking. On occasion, I will cough. I apologize for that. It happens when I talk a lot. But I've been working on learning to breathe more shallow, so it doesn't happen as often. It's very weird, but trust me. Anyway, I know you have a ton of questions. We have a lot to talk about today, so this is what I'd like to do. I'm going to go through some slides. I know, I hate slides too. I'm going to go through some slides, and that will help us kind of streamline the information so it's going in one direction. So what I'll do is periodically I will stop and I'll say, hey, are there any questions about what we've talked about? And then, you know, we'll get all those worked out. And then once we get through everything we have to today, then we can do the random stuff. Does that make sense? And I'll answer every question that I've not addressed with the course material. But if I go off on too many tangents, we won't get through what we need to get through today. And that's a problem for all of us. Does that make sense? So we're just going to streamline the information, but I promise I will answer every question I can. Hopefully, most of it will come out in these fun slides. So we will see how this goes. All righty. Can you guys see the screen okay? Is this working for you guys? Okay, because I hate the lighting in this room already. It's too bright up front, which bleaches this out, and it's miserable. If I shut those off, though, they won't be able to write stuff down, is what I'm afraid of. But you can give it a try. What do you guys think? Can you guys write stuff down with those overheads off? Because it's yeah, no napping. No napping. Definitely no nap. If I can't sleep, you can't sleep.
We got 4 eyes on you.
That's a deal. 6, I think, is. All right. No worries. That's why we're artists. Okie dokie. So, welcome to 3D Foundations. Your 3D career starts here.
Heck yeah.
Hell yeah. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, probably one of your big questions are who am I working with? When you get to the lab, because the class is divided into sort of 2 parts, we have a lecture environment and we have a lab environment. When you guys get to the lab environment, you will be working with Marcus and Sarah. This is Marcus, or what Marcus thinks he looks like as a Lego person. And when we redesigned this class to with the current material, I asked everybody on the team to make a little Lego person of themselves. And this is Marcus's Lego person. And I asked him to write down some things that he's interested in. And the reason being, I want you guys to take note of the things that they're interested in and ask them questions about that stuff. Get to know the people who are going to help you with this first very challenging step into the world of 3D. And one thing I definitely want to point out is the areas of specialty. Areas of specialty is the concept that in the creation of a movie or in the creation of a video game, we have in place what we call the CG production pipeline. How many of you guys have ever heard of that term before, CG production pipeline? Okay, a couple of you, good. Incidentally, anything that I say that you're like, what? I've never heard of that. Oh my, was there another class? Did I miss it? No, you're fine. No worries. Some people have a little bit more knowledge and experience in this area. Some of you are brand new. I teach this class like you know absolutely nothing. So big sigh of relief. I'm going to teach it to you like you know nothing. But CG production pipeline is an important idea. The idea is when I'm trying to make a movie or I'm trying to make a video game, everything starts with the CG production pipeline. It starts with storyboards and it ends with a movie or a video game. And it works a lot like an automotive assembly line. In an automotive assembly line, on one end, we have an empty frame. On the other end, we have a car we can drive. And what happens is this frame moves through the factory and it stops at various stations. And there are people there who work very, very fast and they are very, very good at what they do because they only do one thing. Does that make sense? Specialization. So what happens is if I'm the guy who installs car doors, the frame comes to me, I put the door on. The next frame comes to me, I put the door on. I'm really good and I'm really fast. Does that make sense? Okay, CG production pipeline works much the same way. Again, we have storyboards at the beginning, we have a movie or a game at the end. And several stops along the way are things that Marcus has written down as his areas of specialty. And you can see he's very much into modeling and texturing. Those two disciplines go hand in hand. We're going to get into both of those in this class. Lighting and rendering, we will get into that stuff as well. There's other things in there in terms of animation and rigging or setup. So there's a bunch of different disciplines. And as you are going through the program here at Full Sail, you're going to have all kinds of different classes to learn what these different disciplines are. Because most of you are very excited about joining this field, but maybe aren't 100% sure what it is you'd like to do. Some of you might even think you know exactly what you want to do, and interestingly enough, you might find something else that you like even better. So as we move through these classes, you're going to learn new stuff all the time, and hopefully it'll help start finding your way to what it is you want to do. Does that make sense? Get a hell yeah there? Ooh. Get a hell yeah there? Hell yeah. There we go. That was a much better one. Okay. So anyway, feel free to heckle Marcus about his interests. Also in lab, we have a girl. That's right. Yay, girls. That's Sarah, or what Sarah thinks she looks like as a Lego person. And you can see her areas of interest here. She's into animation, rigging or setup, and she's into modeling, which is an odd combination. Typically, animators and modelers, they don't sort of cross specialize, but she's unique in that way because she can do both. And again, you can see what other things she's interested in. So if you're feeling like, yeah, you know what, I kind of am interested in animation, start talking to her. She's a great resource. And in terms of Marcus and Sarah, there are only people on this team who are great with beginners. They're very patient. And if you've ever taught anybody how to do something who knows nothing about what they're doing, you know that's probably the hardest person to be able to reach and help. These guys are awesome, and that's why they're in this class. And I feel very lucky to have them. Brian does not have a Lego guy yet. He's working on his. But Brian also helps me with the class. He is also a course director. He primarily deals with the online class. However, if you go to the Google Hangout, which is our live online help station where you can get help when you need it, go there. Brian is the captain of that. And we also have other people who are helping out with that as well. So when you need help in whatever hour of the night, you can sign in on the computer and literally get help. Does that make sense? And you're going to need it. So please start utilizing that stuff early. Don't wait until it's over your head. And then this, you would probably guess, was me. And again, that's my little Lego dude. And you'll see him a couple of times popping around through the slides and doing all kinds of fun things. And next question I'm sure you're wondering about is, what are we going to be doing this month? What are we doing? We are going to be building assets or objects from our everyday world. Much like the idea that when you're first learning to draw, you start with still life because you have to very thoroughly understand reality before you can create plausible fantasy. Does that make sense? We've all seen movies or games where we see a creature or whatever and we're like, that looks ridiculous, right? Not even believable. So we study reality until we own it, and then we can make very plausible and fun fantasy. So just like we start with still life, we're going to start modeling by modeling everyday objects that we see all the time. And then that will help us improve our modeling skills. And then ultimately, we're going to take all of these objects that we've built this month and we're going to bring them into a final scene, and we're going to render out a final image showing off all the stuff that you've built. And it's basically, it's an image so that you can print that thing out and put it on your refrigerator. You can put it on your Facebook page. You can do whatever you want with it and show everybody what you did in your very first month of computer animation. And it's pretty cool to have that so quickly in terms of what you can accomplish. Now, in terms of the objects that we're building, obviously some of them are harder to build than others. So we start with easier ones, the level 1 or minion level objects. And then we move into level 2 objects, boss level. And then by the end of the class, we get into our level 3 or supreme poly commander level objects. And when you follow this progression, at the end of the class, you'll actually be able to build your own little Lego person. Yes. It's actually, I think it was like 2 months ago, we had a student who, once he told everybody he knew that he was going to have a Lego person at the end of this class, everybody wanted him to build them a Lego person. So he ended up having to make a bunch of them. But got to have a Lego person, and of course, build cool accessories for them to wield. So you'll have all kinds of fun stuff that you can make. All right, any questions about the stuff we talked about so far? What are we actually doing this month? Anything at all? Don't be shy. How about my digital friends? You guys have anything for me? Nothing? Nothing? Okay, that's cool. You don't have to have a question. I just want to give you an opportunity. Let's talk about the grading, because this is important. When it comes to modeling, what does it look like? Does it look like the thing you're supposed to be building? Just like drawing, does it look like the thing that I'm trying to draw? Okay, that is the artistic criteria. And we're going to talk all about and break down what am I looking for. But this is basically, does it look right? Does that make sense? Artistic criteria. However, if you look at what artistic criteria counts for in your grade, what's the most I can earn from artistic criteria? 34%. That's right, 34%. Who said that? Good for you. Now, 34%. Can you pass with a 34? That's not a passing score. Does that make sense? So, does it look right? Yes, that's very important, but that is not the whole deal. Does that make sense? We are building a CG asset. We are building an object that's going to be part of a pipeline, and it has to be usable by the other members of the pipeline for the various disciplines that they support. Does that make sense? As a result, we have all kinds of technical and organizational criteria that it also has to adhere to. What that means is, if I open your file and I look at what you've built, and a golden shaft of sunlight shines down from the sky, and I hear angels sing, and a tear rolls down my cheek because I am so awestruck by its beauty, the most you can get is a 34. Does that make sense? You've got to do the technical and organizational aspects of the assignment, or it will not pass. Does that make sense? You got to do the other things. Now, the positive side of that is the fact that you're not too heavily penalized for not building beautiful stuff right away. So if you're new to this, you have the opportunity to learn and grow and still earn a lot of points doing the other very important aspects of modeling for a CG production pipeline. Does that make sense? Art for yourself, you do it the way you want to. You take your time. When it looks good to you, it's good. When it's done, it's done. That's art for you. Art for hire is a whole other animal. This is a machine. It's a business. You do it on time or you're fired. Does that make sense? You build it the way I want to, and even if I'm asking for something wrong, you do it the way I'm asking for it, or you're fired. Does that make sense? Art for someone else when you're being hired, not even close to the art you do for yourself. Does that make sense? Okay, just trying to get that mindset into you right now. We are 3D copy machines. Give me a 2D image, I will make a 3D version of it, and it will be perfect. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, good, good. Art you do for yourself, that's the rewarding stuff. That's what you do with your time off that you've earned by making lots of money doing what they want. Does that make sense? Very rarely is what you're working on stuff that you adore as well. You know, you might be really into Gears of War or something like that. I want to work on Gears of War, but right now you're animating for, you know, some Disney show. Doesn't matter. You got to do what you're getting paid to do to the best of your ability, and you work your way towards trying to get to those jobs that you really, really love, doing exactly what you want to. And even then, you know, you might be modeling a tree. Actually, I knew a guy where he worked for EA. That's what he did, trees. You need trees, right? But he was doing trees on a car racing game, which means the only way you would see his work is if he crashed. Oh, nice tree. Yeah, exactly. So again, sometimes the work is not as gratifying as the stuff you do for yourself, but you need it because that's how you eat. Make sense? Okay, good. All right. So again, we have technical and organizational criteria that are every bit as important as does it look right. And of course, we give you a list of what these technical and organizational requirements are so that you can't possibly not get them because they're yes/no things. For example, if I say, brush your teeth, mow the lawn, wash the dishes, you either did those things or you didn't. Does that make sense? So we give you a list so you know what I'm looking for. I call it transparent grading because I'm not trying to fake you out. I give you a list. This is what I want. You do these things, you're going to get a great grade. You ignore the list, you're not going to do as well. Does that make sense? Okay, so when you're on FSO and you see that download the student self-grade document, that's what I'm talking about. The self-grade is the list of what I'm looking for with every turn-in. Does that make sense? Hell yeah? Good. Self-grade, that's your buddy. Get the points, don't be silly. All right, class structure. As I alluded to earlier, we have a lecture environment and we have a lab environment. The lecture environment is what's going on right now. I'm here talking to you and we are communicating techniques, tool use, strategies on how to model on a professional level to the best of our ability. This is the time where you are going to be listening intently and taking notes. And the taking notes is critically important. The reason being, there is a lot to remember and you won't be able to remember it all. And that's not a challenge. I'm not telling you you're not smart. If you were not smart and you were not creative, you would not be sitting in here. But let me tell you, when you're working with a computer, there's always like 59 steps to do something. And if you are missing just one of them, you have nothing. Does that make sense? It's you're not like, close enough, or I got the gist of it. There's no gist of it. You got to have it. Does that make sense? If you don't have one of the steps, you come to a grinding halt and you can't do your job. And that's really frustrating. Does that make sense? Okay. So point being, you're going to need to write stuff down. Typically what I will do when it's really critical, like super uber critical, I will say, and these are the steps for blah, blah, blah. And then you've got to write that stuff down. I love notebooks because A, they never run out of power. And B, you can draw pictures. When I was in school, I drew pictures of everything because if I didn't understand it, I'm a very visual guy. I like to draw pictures of the interface or what I'm looking at, so it makes more sense to me. So drawing is a huge plus, and it's just easier, just free flowing information to just jot it down with a pen or a pencil. It's going to make a huge difference. I find that the students who take the most notes tend to be more successful in this class. So is it, the students who are taking the notes do better, or the people who do better typically take notes? I'm not sure it's a chicken and egg thing, but what I can tell you is typically the more notes you take, the better you do. Now, in terms of the notes and information, again, as I said, the lecture environment is where we do the explaining part of it. And we talk all about what it is we're going to do on any given day. But we also have what we call in-class activities. And these in-class activities are little mini assignments that we do together. So for those of you who are hands-on learners, right, you'll actually have the opportunity to practice what we just talked about. So I will lecture you a little bit. We will do an activity that is based on that lecture. We will lecture some more, and then we'll do another activity that is based on that lecture. And what that does is it tells you and me right then and there, did you understand what we just talked about? Because if I explain to you how to do something, and then we go to do the activity, and you look at me and you're like, so what was the first step now? I don't remember. Your approach to your learning is not working. Does that make sense? Immediately, that's telling you, the way you're trying to learn is not effective, because I just told you how to do something, and now we're trying to do it and you can't do it. Does that make sense? So if you're paying attention, if you're taking notes, you can do the activities. And each day we move through material. At the end of the day, we have what we call a skill check. The skill check is a way of figuring out, did you learn everything we talked about today? And again, it is immediate. If you can do the skill check, then you understood what we talked about today. You own that information and you can use it. Does that make sense? Okay. Now these skill checks are extremely helpful. Again, not only do they point out that you understand what we talk about, they are each worth plus 1% to your grade. And what that means is we have 10 skill checks. So you can add 10 points to your final grade. It is worth a full letter grade to do all the skill checks. So if you earned a 73 in this class, if you did all 10 skill checks, you just got an 83. Does that make sense? There is tremendous value in doing these skill checks, not only because they bump your grade up, but because they show you know what you're doing, because you can do the skill check. Again, for those of you who are hands-on learners, for those of you who like to immediately execute after we talk about stuff, that's exactly what we're doing in here. But please do not mistake hands-on learner for I don't take notes. Does that make sense? That is not the same thing. You're gonna need to write stuff down or you won't be able to do the work. Does that make sense? Okay, I try to be very honest with you up front because I don't want you to be surprised when you're not understanding what's going on and you're being overwhelmed, because that's what will happen if you kind of just sit there and let the information flow over you. Any of you guys ever play sports? You guys play baseball or football or soccer, or tennis, anything like that? Okay, good. A good number of you. So let's take a look. Here's me holding my tennis racket, right? If somebody hits me the ball, am I going to hit it? Yeah, maybe. I got my racket. I'm on the court, right? But I'm not actively involved, right? I'm holding the required equipment. I'm in the place I need to be. I'm on the court. I'm on the balls of my feet now. My knees are bent. I'm leaned forward. My eyes are focused. I am holding this racket. I am ready to go. Am I more likely to hit the ball now? Way more likely. I am actively engaged in what I'm doing right now. Does that make sense? That thing is not going to get past me, or with a much significantly lower percentage. Does that make sense? Active participation. Learning works the same way. If you kind of sit there and let the information wash over you, that's passive. Some of it will stick, some of it won't. Does that make sense? Active participation, much higher rate of success. So I always recommend write down as much as you can. If you need me to say something again, I will do it. If you need me to say it slower, I will do it. I have no problem with any of that. Does that make sense? Okay, because what I do is after we talk, I kind of look at you and I take your temperature and I see if we're all understanding what I'm talking about. And if I'm getting mostly positive, okay, let's get on to the next thing. If you don't get it, you need to raise your hand and ask a question. That's why you're here. If you knew everything, we wouldn't even be talking. Does that make sense? Okay, so be active. Participate in your education. Sit as close to the front as you can. It is to your advantage to do so. The further you are from me, typically the easier it is to disengage and get distracted by something else. And again, I've been teaching this class for over 10 years. I know what works and what typically is a barrier to success. Does that make sense? So this is just advice, me to you, trying to help you before you fall into these pitfalls, not after. I'm a red pill guy. I'm going to tell you what I think and what I've seen and what my experience has been. So you don't have to make that mistake. I don't want you to have problems. I want everybody to do great. I love when you guys are successful. It makes me very happy to see that. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, good. All right, now, and we talked about this, the idea that we have a skill check at the end of each day. There's 10 of those, and if you do all of them, which I do recommend very highly, that's a full letter grade improvement. So that is well worth your time and effort. Any questions about the self-grade, the in-class activities, or the skill checks? I want to make sure you guys are solid on that. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If you ask a question, I guarantee you there's at least 5 other people with the same question they didn't want to ask.
If we're familiar with whatever the skill check is, we'll be able to jump ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you take a look on FSO, which is like the master instructions for this class, it's got everything you need. If you have a question and there's not live people to ask, go to FSO. I bet you the answer is there. But if you go to FSO, you'll see that we have archived all of these lectures. All of them, all 11, have already been recorded from previous months. So you can watch next lecture. You can watch next week's lectures. You can watch as much in advance as you want. You can do the work as early as you want. What I very strongly recommend is don't submit it. Do the work. Show it to us in the lab. Get feedback before you turn it in. Always get feedback, because what happens is you might have seen the video and you're like, okay, I kind of got it. I know what's going on. But then when we actually do it together and I'm here with you and we work on it, or you're in the lab and we work on it, and you go, oh, you know what? I really get it now. This is better. You don't want to have 15 submissions. Does that make sense? So just ask, hey, I'm thinking about turning this in. Could you look it over? And feedback is great. You should be getting that anyway. But yeah, work ahead if you want to. Absolutely. You could finish the whole class in week 1 if you want. But like I said, I would wait to submit until you've had it looked at by somebody. But that's an excellent question. How many of you guys were wondering that kind of thing, right? Anybody? A couple of you already, see? So you're their hero. So point being, great questions. Everybody's got them. Not everybody wants to ask. So be a hero and ask a question. All right. The other environment we have is the lab. What's cool about the lab is I'm not there talking the whole time, or most of the time. In the lab, you've got Marcus and Sarah, and for a chunk of the lab, me too. And what happens is you're actually working on the stuff that we did in class. You can work on your in-class activities in the lab. You can work on your skill checks in the lab, and you can work on your weekly turn-ins in the lab. And if you're wondering, well, wait, what's this weekly turn-in thing? Well, just like the skill check is an accumulation of everything you learned on each day. You'll have 3 skill checks a week because we have class 3 times. The weekly turn-in is a culmination of the skill checks. So each activity builds on one another. They all lead to the skill check, and all of the skill checks lead to the weekly turn-in. It's the rungs on a ladder. Does that make sense? You climb them all, you get where you want to go. So you can work on all of this stuff in the lab. You will have to work on it at home as well. There's no way you can finish all this work just in lab. Again, I just want to prepare you for that in advance. You will be working at home. If you've got your notes with you, you will be able to answer the questions that you have because you have those answers. And again, big ticket item for taking notes. As the month progresses, you're going to get tired. It's harder to remember stuff. If it's written down, you can always get to it. Does that make sense? If you're just listening to information, you're borrowing it, you're renting it. If you write it down, you own it. You want to own the information. You don't want to borrow it from me. You want to own it. That's what you're paying for. right? Own the material. So when you get to the lab, it's more one-on-one help. I knew it would happen eventually. Sorry. More one-on-one help. They can actually sit down with you and help you directly, one-on-one. Hey, I'm having trouble with this. I don't understand that. But the lab is a great place for you to work on stuff that didn't go quite so smoothly in lecture. If there's an activity that you didn't do great on, let's work on it in the lab. Let's get better at it. If there's a skill check you're struggling with, let's work on it in the lab. The good news is learning how to do this is as simple as practice. That's it. If you have ever learned how to play the guitar, skateboard, windsurf, snowboard, I'm listing stuff I do, paint, draw, sculpt, whatever you have learned how to do in life, it was through repetition. If you spend time working on it, you get better. Video games, right? You play a video game till you beat it, right? Figure out the AI, figure out the pattern to how you get past each room or each level. Education is the same way. You've got to work it until you get it. Does that make sense? You don't buy a game, play it once, get killed, and give up. Nope, done. You practice. This is the same way. But that's the good news. There's no magical powers. If you practice, you're going to get good at this. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get, and the faster you're going to get there. It's that simple. You spend time with the machine, you're going to be successful. If you don't spend time with the machine, you're going to struggle. Does that make sense? Again, I want to give you the reality of the situation so you can make better decisions. Does that make sense? Hell yeah? Thank you. Good. All right. Now, quick look at this week's objective. We are going to be, by the end of week 1, believe it or not, we're going to be modeling. We're going to be building 3 level 1 assets. And what happens is we have this special Maya scene with these cute little pillars in it. And you're going to build these objects and actually bring them into the scene and put them on the pillars, kind of displaying them. And that's what you'll be submitting for your weekly turn-in. Again, you'll be building the objects that we give you a list to work from. So it's not like you build whatever you want to. You have to build what we want you to build. But again, that's all due at the end of each week. And if you, again, all those dates are on FSO, so make sure you're looking at that. And don't wait until the night this stuff is due to start working on it. I mean, honestly, even 2 nights before, you should start trying to work on this stuff as soon as the new week starts. Anything you wait to the last minute, there's always a problem, right? Technology has a way of going, you know what? This is due soon. I need to mess something up here, right? There's always a wrinkle when you wait till the last second, an unexpected technical issue that drives you mad, right? Don't wait till the last minute. Personal advice, me to you, assignments are due at midnight. At 11 p.m., stop working, okay? Stop working. Start saving your files. Go through the student self-check document. Make sure you're doing all the technical and organizational things you need to. Get all that stuff together, wrap it up, and package it ready to turn it in. If you still have some time, okay, work a little bit more. But you need to turn in your work on time. Does that make sense? You've got to submit it. And sometimes it can take 20 minutes or a half hour to submit a file depending on the strength of your internet. Does that make sense? So if you wait until midnight to try to submit stuff, 11:59, come on, please, go, go, go. Usually there's a technical problem. Usually it doesn't upload in time. And I got to be honest with you, I've been grading assignments submitted at 11:59 for over 10 years. They're usually not very good. If you're working right up to 11:59, it's probably not your best work anyway. Does that make sense? Get it done early. Do the silly little technical things because they account for like nearly 70% of your grade. So do those because those are the gimme points. Does that make sense? Get a hell yeah? Hell yeah. Good. Question, go ahead. You or you? Go ahead.
So to finish the work early, we can show you and ask your opinion.
Always, always. Honestly, if I could make you guys bring me your work before you submit it, I would. I think it's like some kind of state law. I'm not allowed to do that. But what I want you to do is bring your work to me and say, hey, I'm thinking of turning this in. What do you think? Did I forget something? What do I need to do to make this better? That's what you should be doing. Again, I can't make you do it, but I would love it if you did. Because then I can tell you, hey, you forgot this. Don't forget that. Make sure you do this. And I know you're going, oh, that sounds like more work. I'm not bringing you my stuff. Well, do you want to be successful at this, or do you want to do less work? Because they're really not the same thing at all. Does that make sense? You can't have that mindset. Yes, you might have more work to do, but you're going to learn and you're going to do better and you're going to have a better chance at getting that job you want to get. Does that make sense? Because that's the end game, right? We all want this job. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I don't know if anybody has told you. This line of work is not, I went to school, I got my paper, I passed. Okay, Pixar, you can duke it out with ILM over who gets me, because I did it. That is not how this field works at all. There are many people who want to have jobs in this industry, and there are not enough jobs for everybody who wants jobs in this industry. It is a fight. It is a competition. You have to win the job. Does that make sense? You have to outshine 1,000 other people who want the same job as you. So C plus effort's not going to cut it. Does that make sense? You have to win this job. This is going to be one of the hardest jobs, if not the hardest job you ever got in your life. So you got to be prepared, and you got to be ready to work hard. And that comes from really wanting to do this. So if you really want to do it, we can help you. We will give you your best chance. Does that make sense? Okay, I don't mean to get heavy with you, but again, I'm a realist in that regard. I am optimistic, I'm very positive, but I am also a realist. Does that make sense? And it's kind of a weird combination. But, again, when you know what you're up against, you make better decisions. And that's why I tell you these things, because I don't know if anybody will. I think it's important. You deserve to know how it actually goes down. Hell yeah? Good, good. And again, my goal is not to scare you, but make you aware of the way things are. Again, so you can make smarter, better decisions for your future. Because that's what this is all about. That's why I'm here. I was telling Brian, one of my favorite things is when I get emails and phone calls from people who they get that job they wanted. I can't believe it, I'm working on Iron Man. You know, that's my favorite email or phone call. I did it, I'm here, I'm doing it. Holy cow, this is insane. That's what usually follows. But point being, the work starts in here right now. Give it your best effort. You will never be disappointed as long as you are giving it everything you can. I know that's what I learned about me. If I give it everything I can and I don't do quite as well as I'd like, I did everything I could. I can live with that. Half effort and failure, that's all on me. Does that make sense? Okay, again, I just throw that out there because I think it helps for your thought process. All right, so in terms of lecture material, the stuff we're going to talk about today, we are going to get into specifically the creation of the folder system in Maya, which we need to create projects. And obviously this is something you're going to have to do. Anything I show you how to do, you're going to have to do it at one point or another, so just be aware. We're going to talk about Maya's interface. We're going to get into the importance of reference and how we use Polygon primitives to build the things we build. All right? Oh, but I do want to give you a chance to ask me about anything I've talked about so far. You guys have anything for me? You don't have to be shy. Yes. Yes.
I actually just started on campus.
Oh, good.
Online student. I was wondering if we're already supposed to have all the software downloaded or not.
Well, everything you need for this class is on FSO. As I've said, FSO is, you know, the instructions for this game we're playing. So you will be able to download and install the stuff you need. Today, and I was talking to my digital friends about this before, today is the one and only day that it's not a huge deal if you don't have Maya already installed. Does that make sense? You can get away with it today. But by Thursday's class, you have to have it installed. You have to have your activity files downloaded. You have to have your skill check files downloaded. You know, you got to be dialed in. Some classes you kind of ease into, like getting into those swimming pools that have that nice, easy, get into the cold water phase, and until you get it to the Maginot Line. But anyway, point being, some classes you can ease into. This is more like a race. Here we go. So look over FSO, read those activities, make sure you understand what's in them. Some of them are just like check off. Did you do it? Yes, no. Yeah, I did it. Read that stuff. They don't pay me by the word. If it's in there, you need to know it because it will help you be more successful. Or it's a rule or a policy that you will be held to. So make sure. The question was on FSO, do I have all the materials I need for this class? Do I have to go outside of it? And the answer is you have everything you need. The one thing that you would have to go outside of the class for that I can think of would be the installation of Google Chrome, which is a web browser, and that's the one that works with the Google Hangout. Unfortunately, you can't use whatever browser you want, but we did give you a link to get to the Google Chrome so that you can download and install it, and it's free. So there's nothing in there that will cost you anything. So everything you need is in there, but make sure you are looking over FSO. You wouldn't play a game if you didn't know the rules to it. You don't want to take a class that you don't know the rules to either.
On FSO, it says that we need Maya 2017.
That's
I installed 2018.
Yep, you need to download and install 17. Yes, please. That is a terrific question, but we are currently working with 2017, not 2018. And what you have to realize is that all the classes after us are still using 2017. So if you have a different version of Maya, things might not be the same. Some of the files that they give you might not work, and it can lead to issues. The good news is you can have 2017 and 2018 on your laptop, and it's not a big deal. And I'm pretty sure it uses the same serial number as well. So just make sure you use the link that we gave you and download it from there, and you should be good to go. But that's another great question. Thank you for asking. Yes? Well, the thing is, and this is, hopefully, I don't know where I am time-wise, but when it comes to applications these days, they don't do a ton of debugging. What they do is they build an application and then they just kind of throw it out there. And whatever goes wrong with it, you know, do I send a report? You know, when the thing crashes on you, do I send a report or no? And yes, okay, well, what happened? I was doing this and blah, blah, blah. The problem is they don't do a lot of debugging because debugging is expensive and time consuming. So they don't want either of those. So what they do is they create an application and just turn it loose in the wild for us to debug for them. Does that make sense? So 2018 has not been approved yet by this school to be utilized with our operating system that we're using on our computer, the laptops that we give you guys, the other classes that are teaching and creating material for you to learn from. Does that make sense? There's way more compatibility issues that we're trying to skirt by staying with 2017. Now the good news is, or eventually we will be doing 2018. You have to move forward. But at this point, we've not been authorized to do so yet. It's a good question, but that's why we do it. And believe me, I don't just make stuff up like, well, you know what? We're going to use Maya 4.6. You know, there's always a really good reason for why we're doing what we're doing. But do always ask, because I think you need to know. That's important. Anything else? Fabulous. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about file management. In terms of file management, it's critically important that we are organized. Again, when we are working on a CG production pipeline, we are working with teams of people, often in the hundreds. So organization becomes critically important. Also, we are working with Maya to create whatever it is we're creating, and we're a team. And the way it works is we are the art and Maya is the math. Does that make sense? Because that's what we're doing. We're creating art with math, but we have to work together. So as a result, we need to be organized. And Maya actually has a great file folder system that we utilize in order to stay organized. Otherwise, we have utter chaos. And I think I Googled chaos to find that picture. But what we're going to get into is the creation and setting of projects and the importance of naming. But before we get into that, I just want to show you really quickly the idea behind the file folder system. It works just like a filing cabinet. If I have a whole bunch of papers, I'm going to take these papers and I'm going to put them in folders inside these various drawers inside of this cabinet. And that helps me organize it. These are my taxes. Does that make sense? These are the instructions for the various pieces of equipment that I own. I keep that stuff organized in different drawers. When we are working on a project with Maya, there's a whole bunch of file folders inside of the main folder for whatever we're working on. And some of those folders I need access to because there's information in there that I need. Other folders Maya needs access to because there's stuff in there that Maya needs mathematically. But the whole thing represents the project we're working on. Does that make sense? So we have to create this file folder system so that both you and Maya are on the same page with what you're working on. And this file folder system is critically important that we create it and set our project to it every time we use it. All right, and as I said, it helps tremendously with the organization of the project that you're working on. It helps you to not lose files because what happens is when I'm saving files, it's always going to the same place. Maya knows where it is, I know where it is, I can do my job. Does that make sense? I mean, how frustrating is that when you don't know where files are, right? Where did they go? Where did the machine save it, right? It's a nightmare. So this organization is critically important. All right, now, whenever you see this slide, you know we're about to do an in-class activity. That's something we're gonna do together. Now, typically when it comes to these activities, they are all part of a folder called the activity file folder, which you will download and have on your machine, and you need to know where it is so that you can access it when we do an activity. Where do you think the activity file folder is? Where do I have it right now for you? On FSO, absolutely. I'm going to say that a lot. A lot of the stuff you need is on FSO. But like I said, for today, you're going to be okay. But for Thursday, you need to make sure you've downloaded that file folder and you know where it is. Also important. All right. So let's take a look at the creation of a project folder. And again, remember, anything that I show you how to do, you will have to do it at one point or another. So this is not a, you do it one time, you're done. This will happen again. In fact, when you do your week 3 turn-in, you're going to have to create your own file folder systems. All right, so I want to create a file folder system of Maya because I want to work on this project. Let's say there's this really cool robot I want to build. So the first thing I do is in my Maya interface, I'm going to go to the main menu item, File. Click on that with the left mouse button, and I'm going to go to the menu item, Project Window. And in terms of note-taking, it's very handy if you can kind of develop a shorthand. So you might do File, Project Window. I use these little arrow things to show that I'm going through an interface and finding different things. But you do need to develop sort of a shorthand for what it is you're talking about because it's very hard to write everything. So File, Project Window. Make sure you click right on the word. Funny thing about 2017 and upwards, if you click out over here, sometimes it doesn't do what you want. So just make sure you go to File and actually click on the word in the menu. So I go to Project Window, and it opens this brand new window. And this new window is this new thing that I want to work on. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of folders, and they all have names, and these are the default names. And you want to leave them at their defaults. In some instances, companies you'll be working for will ask you to rename folders specifically. But for the most part, we work at default. So the first thing we do is in the upper right-hand corner, we click on the word New. And what that does is creates a brand new project for us. And you'll see right up at the top, it says New Project, where it says Current Project. And here's where we change the name of it. So I'm going to highlight it with the left mouse button, and I'm going to call it Cool Robot. And what you will notice about my naming is that I capitalize the R in robot. Computers hate spaces. Spaces are non-characters. So you want to make sure there's something in there. So I will capitalize the first letter of the next word to denote a new word. Or if you want to, you can even go in there and just put a little underscore in there. You know, whatever it is you want to do. totally fine, but make sure there's something in there. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, again, I leave all these folders at their defaults, and then, but right under here, you'll see where it says location. And what Maya is asking you is, where do you want me to create this file folder system? I'm going to put it on my desktop just because it's easy for me to demonstrate for you guys. So what I'll do is I'll go over here to this yellow folder and click on it. And whenever you see a yellow folder in Maya, it's like saying, navigate me to where this is. Show me where this is. It will create a path explaining. So what I'm going to do is click on that yellow folder with my left mouse button. And Maya says, okay, well, where do you want me to make this thing? I want you to make it on my desktop. So I click desktop, and then I hit select. And you'll notice that if you look up here in location, now the path is showing my desktop as where this is going. All right. And then I hit accept in the lower left. And then what you will notice is that I have now created this folder called Cool Robot. And when I double click on that folder and I look inside, you'll see there's a whole bunch of folders in there. And again, that's like those many folders that are in my filing cabinet. And there's a little workspace icon in there, and that's basically what launches Maya's interface. I need that. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is a project folder. All right, now, of the utmost importance, if I want to work on my Cool Robot, the very next thing, and it is critically important, is I need to set my project to the project I'm working on. And this is how I explain to Maya, this is what I'm working on right now, okay? So please save my files there, save your data there, access your data from there, use the textures that I'm putting in there. Does that make sense? This is like that drawer. So setting the project is very important. It's simple, it's easy to do, but if you don't do it, a lot of issues crop up from it. These are the steps for setting your project. Again, you have your Maya interface open. You go to your main menu item file, and from the drop down, right under project window, you will see set project. And again, this is how we tell Maya what we're working on. File, set project. Now Maya says, okay, what do you want to work on? Well, on my desktop, I have a file called Cool Robot, and that's what I want to work on. So I only select the outer folder. The outer folder, one click, and then I hit set. So now Maya knows exactly what I'm working on, and it will save files to the right place, it will access data from the right place, everything goes smoothly when I set my project. Does that make sense? Very important, very important. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the Maya interface, because the interface is pretty wild and unwieldy looking. It can be intimidating. Don't be scared. We're going to break it down into little pieces. We're not going to go into too great a depth today, but what I want you to do is start recognizing the different areas in Maya, what they're called, and what they actually do. The reason this is important is because if you have a question for me, particularly if it's like an email or something, if you know the right verbiage, you can ask me the question and I know what you're talking about. Does that make sense? If you ask me, where's the thingy with the doohickey where you go for the what's it's what's? I don't know what you're talking about. And even if I do figure it out, you know, by some miracle, if I can figure out what it is you were asking me, when I answer you, you're not going to know what I'm talking about because I'm going to use the terms that are supposed to be used. Does that make sense? So we need to start talking this new language, this Maya language. So we're going to introduce you to these things, and just like learning any language, we start with the broad strokes and we work our way towards the finer stuff as we progress. But we're going to tackle the interface first, because again, it is kind of intimidating looking. But let's get into that. Okay. Let me resize Maya a little bit. It's a little bit big there. I want my digital friends to be able to see everything also. Okay, great. All right, so first things first, right across the top, those are my main menu items. Main menu items are basically categories that house tools and actions. An example of a tool would be like hammer or saw or chisel. An example of an action would be cut this in half, glue this together, make a hole in that. These are all examples of tools and actions. And if you want to access a tool or an action, as we just previously did, all you have to do is click on the menu item and you will see a drop-down menu with the various tools and actions available to you. Something else you will notice is that when you look at these tools or actions that are housed in here, quite a few of them have these little boxes to the right-hand side. These are the options boxes for the various tools and actions. The idea being, hammers drive nails in as well as pull them out. It depends on how you're holding the hammer. So what we're talking about is the option. How am I using this tool or this action? So I can change the way a tool works by going to its options. So for example, I can click on this box to the right-hand side of the tool, and now I have the options for that tool available to me. They all come typically with some kind of reset to get you back to your default settings. So if a tool is acting funny and you're like, what's wrong with that? Look for the word edit and then choose reset, because that will allow you to reset the tool. But what's also really cool is there's usually a little help icon in there. And as long as you have an internet connection of some variety, if you click on that help icon, it's going to actually open the help documents associated with that tool. So for example, if I want to understand the extrude tool and how it works, we've got some text and some settings that we can play with and some related topics that we can go to. So again, if you need help and there's no one around, you can kind of research this stuff a little bit. Does that make sense? You do need that internet connection, but it's a very handy resource. So definitely something worth looking into. All right, so again, tools and actions are housed in the main menu items. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is your status line. The status line is a way of explaining to Maya what kind of job you're trying to do. Maya does many jobs, but we can't have all the tools available at one time or it would totally crowd the interface. So what we do is we compartmentalize these tools by setting them up by category. So for example, if Maya was an application that built houses, we'll pretend Maya builds houses. You don't use the same tools for painting as you do for shingling, right? You'd have tools everywhere, it'd be a mess. So the point is you have to tell Maya what kind of job are you trying to do, and then Maya will give you the tools you need. So if you're not seeing the main menu items you need to do your job, make sure your status line is set for the thing that it should be set for, because that's what the issue is. We are a modeling class. We will be modeling with polygons. Therefore, your status line should be set for modeling. If it's set for anything else, it will change the menu items that are available across the top. Does that make sense? Hell yeah? Good. So make sure you've got that set for the right thing. Now, next area I want to talk about is the shelf tabs down here. Now, these tabs all house these fun little icons. And what you will notice is that these icons are actually shortcut buttons to main menu items. For example, under Edit Mesh, you will see the Extrude tool, which we will use a lot in this class. If you look at this icon right here, that is the icon for the Extrude tool. So what that is basically a shortcut. So you don't have to go to Edit Mesh Extrude every time. You can click on that icon right there and get the Extrude tool. Now it's true, it doesn't say Extrude tool. When you first hover your cursor over it, a little help balloon will pop up and tell you what it's called. But what you will see is that if you hover your cursor over anything in Maya, Maya's help line will tell you what it is and a little bit about what it does. So if you hover your cursor over anything, Maya will tell you what it is in this lower left-hand corner, the help line. And if you know what something's called, you can look it up using the help documents, right? Because you can do a search for whatever it is you're looking for. So that's also another great resource for getting help. All right. Now, in terms of this area here, this is your panel view. This is your workspace. There's different names for it, but this is basically the canvas that we are creating our art in, right here. And you'll notice that this window also has its own menu. So be aware there are tools and such located in there as well. And they're window specific in terms of what you can do with these various drop downs. Now this particular window is called the perspective window, PERSP. And when you look at it, you can see it looks 3D. It looks like depth. That's what perspective is, depth to whatever it is you're looking at. However, this is not the only window in Maya. This is just a perspective window. This area here in Maya is called the saved layouts area. And the saved layouts are basically showing you the different window configurations that are available for you to use. Again, this is your perspective view. That's this icon right here. But we also have this icon here, which we call 4-view. And 4-view is basically the ability to look at the same scene from 4 different views. The difference between them is this is my, let me get that out of there. This is my front view camera, this is my side view camera, and that's my top view camera. But these views are different. They're called orthographic views. Orthographic views are flat. There is no depth. So if I happen to create a cube, when you look at it here, it looks like a cube. If you look at it in these other views, it looks like a square. That's because a cube with no depth is a square. It's flat. It's the same one, and I'll move it so you can see. It's just 4 different views of the same thing. And the reason we have all these views is because that's how we line stuff up. We use our perspective view to move things around, but we use our orthographics for the precision placement because it's much easier to see things from perfect absolute views. Does that make sense? If I want to place, for example, if I want to place a sphere right on top of these cubes, I can create a sphere. And it's kind of hard for me to figure out the alignment here. But if I look at these views, it's much easier for me to figure out perfect placement because I can utilize all those views together. Does that make sense? That's what all those different views are for. Now, in terms of getting from view to view, because you might think it's kind of clunky to come over here and hit that button, and you're absolutely right. The good news is, if you put your cursor over any window and hit the space bar, you go into that window, you maximize it. And just like it's better to work with a bigger piece of paper than a small one, it's easier to work with a bigger window. Does that make sense? If you want to get out of a window, hit space bar again, and you go back to 4-view, put your cursor over the window you want to be in and hit space bar again. Now you're in that window. Does that make sense? So we can jump around pretty fast into the windows we want. Make sense? Hell yeah? All right, my digital friends, you good? Hell yes, thank you online. All right, so next thing we need to talk about is this area here. This is called the toolbox. The toolbox is basically how we get to the tools that we manipulate with. They're kind of like our hands. I need to get in there and do stuff. And all that's in the toolbox. Now, in terms of the various tools you will need, this very topmost one is the select tool. That's how you select things. If you want to select something, you choose your select tool. It's basically just like holding the object. And what that allows you to do is select something. When it lights up green like that, it's selected. Okay? Now, in terms of what happens when you select something, if you look in this area here, this is called the channel box. And the icon for the channel box is this one way over here in the way right-hand corner. And the channel box is empty until you select an object. And as soon as you select an object, it then populates with information about that object. It's almost like when if you went to the zoo and you just touched a tiger and it told you all about tigers, right? Wouldn't that be a great zoo? Anyway, idea being, you select something and it immediately populates and it tells you what the name of the thing is, P-sphere 1, polygon sphere 1. It tells you where it is in space. It shows you the inputs associated with it in terms of its creation. So a lot of stuff suddenly fills in. When there's nothing selected, the channel box is empty. Make sense? Hell yeah? Good. Now, next tool I want to show you, the Move tool. The Move tool, as you would think, allows you to move things. When you select an object with your Move tool selected, you see these cool arrows on here. These arrows are color coordinated for axes of movement. Up and down, positive and negative, is the y-axis. The arrow is green. So if I want this sphere to move up or down, well, it's yellow now because I selected it. But if I want this sphere to move down or up, I grab the y-axis with my left mouse button, and I can move the sphere up or down. Even if I move my mouse left or right, it really wants to go up and down because I selected specifically the y-axis. Yes? Absolutely. We'll get into that though. Not just yet. But I'm glad you're thinking about that. So here I am moving it up and down. And what you'll notice is when I move this object up and down, do you see what's going on in the channel box? Look over there on the right. Watch when I move it up and down. What's happening? The numbers are changing, right? Because it's actually measuring movement and it's keeping track. Negative is below the grid, negative y. Above the grid is positive y. Does that make sense? It's keeping track of where it is in 6 axes of orientation. You might be wondering, can I just plug in a number? Absolutely. If I put in a +3, the object will move 3 grid units up from its current position in terms of the origin. All right? Now, typically, we don't know exactly what number we want, so we very rarely enter a number. You kind of just move it. But can you move it up? Absolutely. Next question, what's a grid unit? If you look here, you'll see this whole system is on a grid. Each one of these boxes is a grid unit. It's an arbitrary value. It's not necessarily inches or feet or whatever. It can be whatever you want it to be. But you do need to measure things, so it's just an arbitrary value. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's our unit of measurement within Maya. Okay, now, in terms of moving, we can move on these other axes as well. Red is the x-axis. Red stands for side to side. X, positive and negative. Forward and backward is the blue axis, Z. That's depth. Am I sending it away or am I bringing it back? So I can move this object using all these different arrows. Okay? Now it's true, it's kind of slow and clunky to grab it one arrow at a time, but what you can do is grab the middle of the tool or the object and you can move it much more fluidly. But if you look at the channel box, you'll see all the numbers are changing. And the issue you're running into is the screen is flat, but it represents 3D space. So when I grab it in the middle and move it, Maya's kind of guessing at depth. It's not really sure, so it's not as precise. So typically what we do when we're moving objects is we move it quickly where we want it to by grabbing in the middle, and then we use the arrows for precision on final placement. Does that make sense? So we go from the broad strokes to the narrow. All right. Now, incidentally, if I plug in all zeros for my translate values, where do you think this object's going to go? Right in the middle, right? That's called the origin. If you plug in all zeros, it's going to go back to the origin. Because Maya is basically a giant Cartesian grid coordinate system and six axes of orientation. So the origin is right there where everything crisscrosses. All right? Next tool down, rotate tool. What do you think that does? It rotates it, right? Nothing tricky about it. I'm just rotating an object. Actually, you know what? Let me make a cube. It's easier to see. Oh, I got one already. No charge. All right. Sorry. In terms of the cube, you'll notice that it rotates on color-coded axes as well, right? We've got green, which stands for which axis? Y, very good. We've got blue, which is Z, very good, and red, X. And in terms of the rotational values, these are actually in degrees, so you might actually know that number. So for example, if I wanted to put 45 degrees on this cube, I could just plug in 45 degrees and boom, it's in place. Does that make sense? So degrees, that's pretty straightforward. 180 degrees, 360 degrees. Okay, so that's how that works. We also have the scale tool. The scale tool is responsible for making things bigger or smaller. Now it also has color coordinated axes. You'll notice that if I scale in X, it scales both positively and negatively at the same time. If I scale in Z, it's positive and negative at the same time. Now you might be wondering, is there a way to scale the object in its entirety to where it just gets bigger or smaller without distorting it? Absolutely. If you scale from the middle, it changes the size of the object without changing its proportions. And again, this is an instance where you could plug in a value, because when an object is first created, its scale is 1 on all 3 axes, 1/1 scale or actual size. And I could plug in, you know what, I'd like this cube to be 4 times bigger than it currently is. It's now 4 times bigger. Does that make sense? You can just plug in a value there and that will actually work. All good so far? Okay, thank you for playing. All right, so that's how we manipulate things. Now, next thing you're going to want to know is, how do I navigate around inside these windows? Because it looks really cool when you do that. And honestly, I think the first time I took Maya for a spin, I got a little nauseous, so don't worry if that bothers you. But in terms of navigation within that window, there's 3 different button combinations that you'll be using. And in terms of navigating within Maya, you are definitely going to need to either use the pen that came with the tablet that the school issued you, because you can turn your pen into a 3-button mouse, or you have to get a 3-button mouse. And believe me, you need either your pen or the 3-button mouse like you need air to live. Does that make sense? If you try to operate Maya using the trackpad, you will go crazy. Does that make sense? It does not work well at all with just the trackpad. But like I said, you can get away with it today, but be ready. You've got to have either your pen or your mouse for Thursday. Does that make sense? Okay, 3-button mouse. You can get them for $8. Please get one. Well worth it. All right. So, navigation within the Maya windows. This is a perspective window, so there's depth, and I can actually go into this one if I want to. Now, if you look at your keyboard right now, and you look 2 keys to the left and right of your space bar, you'll see the Option key. If you hold down Option and the left mouse button, you get the tumble function. Tumble allows you to see an object from any angle. Left mouse button and Option is tumble. Okay. Middle mouse button held down and Option gives you track or dolly. This allows us to move alongside the object, either up or down, but we don't get any closer to it. So we just kind of move it around. If you want to zoom, that is Option and right mouse button held down. That allows you to zoom in and zoom out. So while we are looking at an object, we'll be tumbling, tracking, zooming, and you'll be doing it so fast, you don't even know what you're doing anymore. You'll just be doing it. Actually, what's really funny is you'll be in a different application and you'll be trying to navigate like you do with Maya, and it's really frustrating because it won't do it. Why isn't everything 3D, is what you will say. But bottom line is, this stuff will become second nature to you the more you do this. So, and that's what you want, fluidity. All right, so that's how we navigate. Now, this area down here is our animation timeline. We're not going to get into hardly any animation, if any. I wish we had more time. I'd love to talk about it. I love animation. But basically, the way this timeline works I'm sorry. Apologize, I think some of my lung just came up. The animation timeline is basically like a flip book. Are you guys familiar with flip books at all? Okay, the idea of a flip book is we have a series of drawings, and each page has a drawing on it that's a little bit different from the other one. And if you show those images in rapid succession at the right frame rate, there's a phenomenon called persistence of vision, which makes you think it's moving, but it's not really moving. Well, basically, each stop on this timeline is a frame or a single drawing for an animation. So when you guys start doing animations, these are individual renders that we run together and make it look like a movie. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyway, that's what this timeline is. Again, we won't get into it in this class, but it's really cool. These are the controls for the animation timeline. Play your animation forward, stop. Play your animation backward, stop. 1 frame ahead, 1 frame back. 1 frame ahead, 1 frame back. Go to the beginning, go to the end. It kind of works like a DVD player, so you can jump around within your animation. This area here is called Maya's layer editor. And the layer editor in Maya works kind of like layers in Photoshop. How many of you guys have used Photoshop before? Okay, so you know that the power of Photoshop is really the layers. That's what makes it cool. The layers in Maya are not anywhere near as cool and powerful as the layers in Photoshop, but it's a similar premise in that you can create layers and put things on layers and lock them and template them and that kind of thing so that they can't be disturbed, use them as reference and that kind of thing. And that's how it's used most for this class. So just be aware that that's what this layer editor is. And we talked about this just above it. What did we say that was called? Channel box, absolutely. Channel box houses information about the selected object. When nothing is selected, there is no information in the channel box. When I select the object, I've got information. Make sense? Get a hell yeah? Okay. Now, like I said, Maya's interface is a little intimidating at first, but you will get the hang of it. We have a series of exercises that will help you through it, and the more you use it, the more familiar you will get, and the better you'll do. Alrighty? Cool. Any questions from my digital friends?
No, sir.
None. Awesome. Good. All right. Let's get into some more fun material. This room is killing me. All right. Oh, let's do another little activity. All right. Now, for anybody who already has Maya installed, you'll be able to do this activity if you have also downloaded your activity file folder. However, if you have not, no worries. As long as you have Maya installed, you can do an activity that's very similar. But let me just show you when we do activities together. So again, when these slides pop up, you know there's something going on. The first thing we do is we set our project to the activity file folder because the files we need are all in there for class. I already made them and they're all in there ready for you. But you got to set your project to that folder so Maya knows what you're working on. Does that make sense? That's very important. Now, also very important, undo. Sometimes some of you guys saw me making it look like time was going in reverse. I was undoing things. If you press the Z key in Maya, that's undo. I think Command Z also works, but just Z is fine. And you can actually set Maya to have, a certain, you can say, give me 100 undos in a row or whatever. So you can set that as a Maya preference. And if we have time, I'll show you at the end of class. But point being, remember that Z key is your buddy. It'll undo something if you did something you didn't really want to do. Now, as I said, I'm going to be working on an activity. So the first thing I need to do is set my project to my activity file folder. Now, on my laptop, in my documents folder, you'll see I've created a folder called 3DF and the year and month that I'm taking 3DF. This is 1803. Granted, it is still February, but they're calling this the March month. So remember that, 1803. And inside this folder, I have my activity file folder. I have my skill check file folder, and I have my asset files. These are the objects we're going to be building. So they're all in one place, and I know where they are. That's important. So I'm going to be doing an activity file because we're in class and doing our in-class activities. So I'm going to set my project to this folder specifically. So I've got Maya open, and I go to File, Set Project. And Maya says, okay, well, what do you want to work on? And I say, well, in my Documents folder, inside my 3DF year and month folder, I have an activity file folder. That's what I want. So I set my project to that. Very important distinction. Setting your project and opening a file are two entirely separate ideas. Does that make sense? Setting a project does not open a file. Opening a file does not set a project. You have to do them both. So first I tell Maya what we're working on, and then now I can open the file I want. So since I set my project, when I go to File, Open Scene, Maya immediately goes to my activity file folder. It goes to my scenes folder, because that's where my files are. And it says, okay, well, which one of these things do you want? And I'm going to go to my toolbox activity and open it up. All right. Whoop. Now, your toolbox activity will open up with this fun little thing in here, which I've made bulletproof so you can't play with it. Sorry. But we'll get into how you can play with it later. But point being, that's our goal. That's our objective. That's what we're trying to duplicate. If you do not have the activity file folder, that's okay. You can just make some simple shapes and just play with them. And I'll see that you're able to understand what we're talking about or what we have talked about. But if you do have the file folder, you can actually try to recreate exactly what I've done here. So if you look down here at the bottom, I have a torus, which is this icon right here. So I click it and it makes one of those. And I'm going to use my space bar to jump between windows. I'm going to use my move tool to raise it so it's resting right on the grid, just as its example is. And then I look at the next one, and this is a cylinder, so I can create one of those. And again, I go to my side view, and I can place that cylinder. And then I see I've got a sphere next, so I create a sphere. And again, you'll notice that I'm in my polygon tab, and that's giving me these things. Next, I have a cube. So I create a cube, and you shouldn't have to adjust these shapes too much to get them in there. And then my very last piece is a pyramid, which is this one. This is the cone, but this is the pyramid, so I make a pyramid. And I bring it up, and the difference is the pyramid is facing the wrong direction. So what I'll need to do is use my rotate tool to rotate it 180 degrees, and then use my move tool to place it into position. And then they look identical except for the color, obviously. And that puts my shapes in place. All right? Now, something you may notice is that when I create shapes, they appear instantly in a shape already. Your computer might be asking you to draw the shape on the grid. That's okay. That's a preference thing. By default, it does that usually. So if you want to just hit the shapes and get the exact ones that I've got, you just have to make a change to your preferences. So let me show you how you change a preference in Maya. If you go to the word Maya and you click on it, way upper left, you'll see preferences. When I go to the preferences, there's all kinds of stuff in here. And incidentally, if Maya's acting crazy and things don't look right, something you may want to do, upper left-hand corner of your preferences window, click on the word edit and choose restore default. And that returns Maya back to factory fresh, the way it came out of the box, in case you accidentally changed something and don't know what you changed. So that's a good thing to know how to do. But in terms of making adjustments in here, oh, also this is where the undo is. If you look in your categories, click on undo, and you can set your undo queue size, how many undos you can do to whatever you want. So make sure you do that. You can change that to 100 if you want to, 100 undos. Just realize that that's kind of tapping into your computer's resources, how much math it can do, because you're making it remember all that stuff. So if you make that number too big, it can cause problems. 100 is plenty safe, and you probably won't need more than 100 undos. But anyway, if you go to the word Maya and preferences, right there. All right, and then of course hit save after you've made an adjustment. But that's how you can adjust your preferences. Now, in terms of the creation of these objects, that stuff is located under your create menu. And you'll notice that we've got different primitives that we can create. And we are working with polygons because we are a polygon class, so make sure you go there. So here's my polygon primitives. And you'll notice interactive creation is unchecked on mine. If you click with the left mouse button, it will check it. If you click it again, it will uncheck it. I like it unchecked because then when I click on a polygon primitive, it just appears. I don't have to figure out the size. Because in the years I've been using Maya, I've never been able to draw exactly the perfect shape I want anyway. I typically end up changing the shape, so I just like to have it set for just make it, and I'm going to make the changes anyway. But that's my personal preference. You can do it any way you wish. But all you have to do is uncheck interactive creation, and then your polygons will just appear. So you're calling that one. All right? Now, I'm going to walk around a little bit, and Brian's going to walk around with me, and we're going to take a look and see how you guys are doing, just navigating the interface, creating polygon primitives, and moving them around. So we'll see how you're doing. And again, this is the way these activities typically go. We just take a moment and watch you guys play a little bit and make sure you understand what's going on. Yep, no worries. And like I said, today's the one and only day. It's not a big deal if you don't have Maya, but you will need it for Thursday. Good job. Good job. Nice. Oh, good. You're working on that project already. Terrific. Very good. Yeah. It's all on FSO. You'll download it from FSO. Yeah. No, it's not an email. It's on FSO. Totally different. Yep. Everything is on FSO. If you go, you'll see there's an activity called use this link to download Maya 2017. So you'll be able to get it there. It is a long download. It takes a while because it's a big file. It's not a fast process, but you can work on it in lab when we get there. So it's not a huge deal. But make sure you're paying close attention in class, because it's much more important that you understand the information we're talking about than downloading Maya right now. Does that make sense? Because you won't be able to catch up. You can get a mouse at the grocery store. It's like in the candy aisle. It's ridiculous. But you can get a mouse just about anywhere. I was at Walmart, I was at Walmart the other day, and they had them for $8. So you can get one of those just about anywhere. Good, good. Excellent. Okay, and as I said, don't worry about downloading Maya right this second, because you will have a chance.
I don't know how to do that.
Make sure you're on the polygons tab.
This one?
Oh, well, you got 18 there. You got to get 17, but polymodeling. Yep, yep. But download 2017, okay? There you go. You got it. All right. Very good. Yes. Yes, but it's going to take, you won't be able to do it by the time we finish lecture. So it's more important that you pay attention and take notes, and we'll take care of that in lab. Does that make sense? Yeah, better use of your time. All right, good job, guys. Looks like for the most part, you guys are getting the gist of it, which is terrific. Don't feel bad if it's awkward or clunky. You're going to get better at this the more you work with it. It's just like anything else you've learned how to do. Any of you guys drive stick? Anybody brave enough to drive standard transmission? Okay. First time you drove stick, was that a fluid and beautiful thing? No. It's a lot of grinding, right? And thank goodness it's somebody else's car, right? Because you don't want to do that to yours. But the bottom, and heaven help you if you stop on a hill, right? That was like the worst thing ever. But eventually, you get smooth. You get used to that clutch gas ratio. You figure that out. Maya is the same way. You're going to get used to that touch, but you're going to have to practice. So as important as it was for you to drive so you could get away from your parents, it is that important for you to learn how to use Maya. So put the same focus into it, make it happen by practicing. Oh yeah, I love that smell, burning clutch. It's my favorite. All right. So now we're going to get back to some more learning. Again, I hate I hate the fact that we have to stop and then get to more learning and I tear you away from Maya because it is fun. It's highly addicting. But we do have to get through all the material. So let's talk a little bit more about the 5 phases of modeling for this class. Now, the 5 phases of modeling is the reference, creation, or gathering, because you can draw your own reference if you want to in the future, not just yet. But you can draw your own reference or find images. We do blockouts. We model the objects, and then we UV map them to prep them for the texturing process. And then we do a little bit of cleanup before we hand it on to the next person in the pipeline. All right, and these are the steps we will be following. Now, the first step, reference gathering and the importance of reference. Reference is critical because, as I said before, we are 3D copy machines. Our job is to take a 2D image and make it 3D. So the better our reference is, the better the model is we're going to create. And honestly, the faster the model will be created, depending on the quality of that reference. So it's critically important. But something I would like for you guys to do is when you're looking at objects, modeling is a lot like drawing. How many of you guys draw? What do we got? Oh, good, lots of illustrators. Don't ever stop drawing. I don't care what technology you're using, draw, 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 draw. In fact, if you're not going to listen to me, at least draw. But what I want you to do is look at the objects that you're trying to create and see the simple shapes inside of them. Because modeling is a lot like illustration in that when you're trying to create a shape, you want to look for the simple primitive, the volume that represents the thing you're trying to build when you go into the modeling process. There's a lot of very similar ideologies there between illustration and modeling. So that's going to help you out a lot if you can envision that. So when you're looking at reference, try to see the simple shapes inside of objects, and that will help you to build them better. Because whether you're talking organic or inorganic, complex or simple, everything can be broken down into simple primitives in terms of creation. Does that make sense? Everything is made of something simple and smaller. Except we use polygon primitives. So instead of drawing a cylinder, we create a cylinder, right? If I was going to draw a telephone pole, I would start by drawing a cylinder, right? Because that's most of the volume and most of the shape I'm looking for. Modeling's the same way. If I'm going to model a telephone pole, I also start with a cylinder. Same ideology. Does that make sense? Is there anybody who has a question on that? How about my digital friends?
They love drawing.
They're good for them. That's awesome. I wish I had more time for drawing. Who could tell me what that is? The Millennium Falcon. Hell yeah. Who's that? Spider-Man. Hey, kitty cat. And I think this is probably the second month only that no one said dog. Usually somebody says dog, yeah. Well, there's always a funny guy. But what we're talking about is silhouette. Silhouette is a concept of shape. It's the shadowy outline of the objects we see in the world around us. Silhouette is job 1 of the modeler. When you are modeling an object, you must hit silhouette. And what that means is I can recognize what the object is with no surface detail whatsoever. Just from its silhouette, I know exactly what that thing is. Recognition. Make sense? Okay. So important is silhouette that I can literally pick out different breeds of dog and different kinds of tree just from the silhouette. I don't even need color information. Oh no, there's definitely some different dogs in there. No, we got, yeah, the wiener dog definitely looks different, but I definitely see lab in there. That's a Chihuahua there. That's definitely the Terrier. This is like, what's her name's dog? Toto. It's Toto. But you can definitely pick out different breeds of dog just from the silhouette. That's not very much detail to go by, but that's why silhouette is so important. Does that make sense? That is our first job as a modeler, is hit silhouette. As a result, that's a big part of our grading. Does it look right? Okay, silhouette. If you are given this reference image, and these were the models you built, these two are close enough in silhouette to the original that you would earn the points associated with silhouette. Does it look right? These models are too different, too far away from the original, and they don't earn the points. It doesn't look right in terms of its silhouette. Does that make sense? Silhouette is yes, no. Form is depth detail, surface detail. That's where we're getting into 3D, right? And in terms of depth detail, we're also grading on that. So again, if this is my reference image, these two models are close enough to that that they would earn the form points for an object. These three, not close enough. Too simple, too inaccurate. You don't get the form points. Form and shape are the two pieces of, does it look right? Does that make sense? Those are the two components, is how close does it look to the original. It is possible to earn silhouette points, but not form points. So I recognize what you've built by its silhouette, but the form is not there. Does that make sense? So those are the two parts that make up that 34% of your grade. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, so shape and form, I gotta hit both of those. All right, let's talk about the skill check for today. Today's skill check is an assignment called the Build Me assignment, affectionately referred to as Captain Idaho. And the skill check file, as with all of your skill checks for lectures, is housed in a skill check file folder, which, where do you think you download that from? FSO, you guys have got it. It's on FSO. Again, this is one of those file folders you're gonna need, so make sure you know where it is. And if I'm gonna work on my skill check, the very first thing I do is I set my project to the skill check folder. Because as far as Maya is concerned, I'm still working on activities. Does that make sense? But I'm changing gears. I wanna work on a skill check. So I have to set my project to the skill check file folder. Now, if you take a look at FSO, where are you, FSO? There you are. If I go to my FSO and I go to, let me go to my skill check for lecture 1. You will see when you open up the activity, Marcus and Sarah, of course, there's some instructions in there that let you know that Maya's kind of a worrywart, so don't panic if it says, uh-oh, something's missing, whatever. Maya's like Chicken Little, the sky's always falling. You just say, okay, and keep going on your merry way. And what we're looking for is, this is what the end result should be. This is your reference image. What should Captain Idaho look like when he's done? This is what he looks like when you open the file. All kinds of blowed up. So what we have to do is use this as our guide and rebuild him. So when you download the file from Maya, let me do a little bit for you here. First, I'm going to set my project, File, Set Project. I want to work on my skill check files, Set. So after you download it from FSO, you've got to set your project to it. And then you go to File, Open Scene, and you will see Build Me right up at the top. So when you open it, you will see, oh yeah, look at that. There's pieces all over the place. Now, the good news is, there's a couple of things that will really help you out. If you select an object, it will tell you what it is in the channel box. Okay, that's why we name geometry. and this is going to be one of the things that we grade on, because we will ask you to name pieces of geometry. When you first create a piece of geometry, it has no name whatsoever. You know, P cylinder 1 or whatever. This scene would be filled with 50 things called P cylinder or P cube, and that would mean nothing to you. I need to know what this is. So when I select it, you'll see it says potato body. Now, if I look at my reference image here, right? In fact, I'm going to borrow this from FSO. FSO and I are tight. So I'm just going to drag that image right out of there. So there's my reference image. That's what I'm going for, right? And let me minimize this, just get it out of my way. This is my reference image. If you look at my potato shape, and you look at my potato shape here, what's wrong with it? It's upside down, right? Because it's bigger on the bottom and narrower on the top. But this guy is bigger on the top and narrower on the bottom. So obviously, I need to rotate this bad boy. And I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees so that it's right side up. All right, now, let's say I'm looking for his nose, right? There's a ton of things in here. I don't need to build anything. Every piece I need is in there. I just got to find it. Well, there's a bunch of stuff in here. Instead of selecting things one at a time and trying to figure out what the heck everything is, there's actually a window in Maya that lists everything that's in the scene so you can find it easily. If you go to Window and choose Outliner, I'm going to, look at that. It opens up the outliner and there's a little list of everything in the scene. So I can either select the nose in here and it will select it out there, or I can select it out here and it will select it in here. Either way, it doesn't matter. Oh, we're always out of time. So what we're going to do is take this and literally move the nose into position, and we're going to use our windows for placement. I'm going to rotate that nose into place, move it to where it's supposed to go, and once I'm happy with it, it's not the right size, so I'm going to scale it. And again, the goal is to make it look right. Does that make sense? Okay, so your goal is make him look like the reference image. Now, unfortunately, we are out of time. I got another class coming in, so we do have to scoot, but you guys know what it is you need to do, and now it's time for you to go to lab, right? The second part of what we're doing today, and that's where you're going to get more hands-on, one-on-one help. So anything you struggled with in class, that's the time to get some help. And don't wait a couple of labs or a week or whatever. Immediately seek help. Does that make sense? The sooner you get there, the more help you're going to get, the better you're going to get, and that's what we want. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, good. All right, so please pack up your gear so we can let these folks in, and then we're going to head off to lab, and I will see you there as well. So me and Marcus and Sarah will help you with whatever questions you have. It should be on FSO. If you select your section, which is section 1, it will tell you exactly where you're supposed to go. But I believe it's Full Sail 4B, room 127. Yeah, you have to select your section though, which is weird the way they have that set up in FSO. But you have to tell it what section you're in order for it to indicate where you're supposed to go.